On the videographer's line.
Excuse me.
Good evening. This is March 5th, 2013 meeting of the Rowley Conservation Commission. It's hereby called to order under authority of MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, the Town of Rowley's Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. And I'll call the roll for attendance. Robert Carpenter is absent. Dave DeMonico.
Present.
Bob Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys is absent. Sam Strike. Here. Kurt Turner.
Here.
Doug Watson.
I'm here.
Chairing, and we have a quorum present.
We have administratively, and we see two sets of minutes here. Three, actually, right, three. Let's see if we can get through those.
I also have payroll.
I think we would, yeah.
It's got the MACC conference.
Yeah.
Split between the 2 weeks.
Okay.
Is that last weekend?
Yeah.
Babysitting day.
So let's review the minutes of January 22nd. I wasn't present, so I'll comment on what you all discussed, but I don't see any typos.
I didn't see anything either.
Did you say January 22nd or 2nd?
Second.
I didn't have that. Didn't have anything.
Nothing here.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
This is for the second, right?
January 22nd.
Oh, 22nd.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
22nd.
I'm sorry, I started with the wrong one, you're right. But I did start with it, so is that what everybody comment, or did not
Yes,
comment
yes,
on
I
it?
was,
Okay.
22nd was, I was,
It's good.
It's good? Okay, so a motion to approve the January 22nd meeting, minutes,
So moved.
in a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now let's move on to the January 2nd, 2013 minutes. No comments on my part?
None here either.
no, no, no,
Not here. I haven't seen anything yet.
I'll let you finish.
Yep. It's good to me. 22.
So, no comments having been made on What are we on here? January 2nd minutes. Do I have a motion to approve them as written?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all against? And the motion passes. All right, we are on a roll. So now let's do February 12th. Maybe we'll catch up someday. I was not here when this discussion was had over the water chestnut removal, but I wasn't aware that one of the people who was here was from AmeriCorps. Is that right?
Yes.
Interesting. My daughter was in that for the past year, and they did quite a bit of invasive species removal in the course of their work. There's a lot of invasive species in this country. More every year, I think.
Including all you white guys.
Yes, that's a good point. True. I think in that regard, on page 1, second line from the bottom, it would be AmeriCorps PS Corps.
Oh, sure.
On the first page, Brent, under the third paragraph down, acceptance of minutes. Second line, Garna seconded the motion and the motion passed unanimously instead of passes. I wouldn't have said anything except to use passed very well. So.
Well, I know, that's why I was surprised, because we normally cut and paste that. It just changed the name to the commissioners. Easily corrected.
Hey,
Right.
no, you finish up with them.
Oh, I've got stuff on page 3, but I'll wait till everyone else gets to that.
Oh, okay, page 2 of 3. Down at the bottom, consideration of gift of land. In your discussion of it, I would think it should say, no one was in attendance to discuss the consideration of a gift of land, or the gift of, rather than just saying of land.
Okay.
Just a minor English thing. I know, it's an English teacher. Just put that in. All you really had to do is put an A in.
Of a land gift.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comment? Oh, you had a comment on page 3, Kurt?
Yeah, 237 Dodge Road paragraph. First line, I just have a minor preference for using the word reported rather than related. But that's not, I've got some other things in there.
Okay.
Let's see, what did request from the developers to be allowed to start some project activities. Prior to something. It seems to me that we're permitting that to be done before something else is done. That might be a requirement. And I don't know what that is at that point, but
The issuance of the stormwater management permit.
perhaps we ought to say so there, rather than later on. So be allowed to start.
Well,
some-
down below in the last sentence, well, here again, I'm not predisposed to any particular way, but the last sentence says, with the approval of Watson and Turner, limited activities were allowed to occur while the stormwater management permit application was before the commission.
I didn't understand what that sentence meant.
Maybe you should
That
change
meant their
that.
application
Maybe
was
that
in
should just go at
process.
the beginning
How about had been allowed to occur? Is that really what
on that.
the past perfect tense?
Well, I was reporting that I had had a discussion with the chair and vice chair
Right.
to seek that approval.
Well, in that sentence, I would say with the prior approval of the
Okay,
chairman, the
sure.
chairman and vice chairman of, Chairman Watson and vice
So just
chairman.
insert the word prior?
I would.
Yeah, that's
And then,
fine.
and then indicate our titles. I said, what law firm is that? Watson and Turner, not from the.
Well, you usually just use his last names, which is,
Yeah.
well, not always.
I know
actually.
that, but, I mean, the reader, an independent reader should understand that
Yep.
it's not just a couple of people on the board.
Right.
I mean, Huey, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Not
That
that,
one.
not that they couldn't serve them effectively in that, but.
Top of page 3, where it just discusses the description of the 1.9 acres. That's the assessor's description.
Correct.
The deeds said approximately half an acre,
Correct.
and the title of this topic talks about the open space land consisting of 1.99 acres. So we were dealing with 3 different sizes? Or is it 1.9?
I rounded.
Yeah.
I don't know, it would be 2.
Yeah.
Put the other 9 in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Just want to make sure we weren't talking about 3 different
No.
No.
sizes.
Two's
Just
enough.
Okay, yeah.
That topic's gonna come up again today, right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll hold further comment until then.
Any other comments on the minutes?
No, no here.
A motion to approve the minutes as amended,
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion carries. That brings us to the first item on the agenda, after the initial administrative matters, is the 7:45 item, the new stormwater management permit for 237 Dodge Road, map 9, parcel 21, residences at Rowley Country Club LLC.
I do have a legal ad for you, but first we need to ask the applicant's representative if they have proof of a butter notification, which would then allow us to open the hearing.
I did not bring the green cards. I did mail them, and I will give them to you tomorrow, but I assure you that they were mailed.
Okay, well, I know, because we had a couple
Yes.
email exchanges
Yes,
on
I
this.
assure you they were mailed. I inadvertently forgot to bring them.
That's all right. Okay, we can proceed with the hearing on the understanding that if we don't get them, we can't grant the permit.
Right,
So,
okay.
but
Well, the proceedings would be
sort of
null and void.
You have to reopen it.
Yeah, we'd have to reopen it and renotice it, so it'd be really advisable to bring them. But I'm sure you did. All right. So this is a legal notice of the Rowley Conservation Commission in accordance with the Town of Rowley Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw as amended. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, March 5th, 2013, 7:45 PM at the Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a stormwater management permit application filed by the residences at Carriage Pines LLC for proposed construction of 18 duplex units, 2 paved driveways for access, proposed sewage disposal system, stormwater management area, and other utilities at 237 Dodge Road, map 9, parcel 21 in Rowley. Welcome.
Good evening. For the record, Rich Williams with Williams and Sparagus, the folks who filed all that paperwork. And obviously here on behalf of the residents of Carriage Pines for this permit. Just to give you a little background, we have gone through the planning board process. It was approved, both the special permit and site plan approval. Those documents are in the application. The land transfer has taken place, and the current owner and developer are have done some land clearing with their approval.
Right.
And as part of the site plan approval, we designed the stormwater for this project to meet the Massachusetts stormwater management policy and regulations. We have filed with the EPA the NPDES permit, and our stormwater pollution prevention plan is, as part of that, is also what has been filed as part of this permit. So we've got a consistent package that has gone to the planning board, the EPA, and to you guys. And I'll take you through the stormwater in general terms. I'm not going to specifically go through all the numbers, but it has been designed so that there is no increase in off-site rates of runoff. We're treating all of the stormwater per the Massachusetts stormwater regulation, so that everything that goes into the pond and ultimately out in bigger storms out this discharge, which is between the first and the ninth hole, meets the suspended solids removal. We've got infiltration that's proposed at the site. We've got 2 ponds. We've got an infiltration pond and a deeper pond in this location, so that we have infiltration treatment. We've got deep sump catch basins, 4 bays at the outlets for additional cleaning. So we've got more than enough treatment from a total suspended solids standpoint. We also have, in order to mitigate the rates, the backs of these units discharge towards, I say the back of the property, but away from Dodge Road and towards the wetland areas. We've got some rooftop infiltration proposed for those units to help mitigate the rates of runoff. And those would, in the smaller storms, infiltrate entirely, and in the larger storms there may be some outlet from those. The drainage I've got highlighted on this plan in green, so that we've got low points in the roadway, collection points, set of catch basins here, set of catch basins here, and a catch basin here, as well as here, which all discharge into these ponds. So that all of this is going in this direction. And again, the backs of these units here discharge towards the golf course. We've got, and have included in the application, a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and that shows stockpile areas, construction entrance, silt fence detail, although the silt fence has been with approval from at least Brent, and I wasn't part of that discussion, but it was changed to, I think, was it
Bark mulch sock.
bark mulch sock, so, which is, from my standpoint, just as good. So in lieu of silt fence, we've got that. And we show the location of all the siltation control. I've got highlighted the perimeter area. We've also got a line of siltation control here. This is what is installed in the field now. This siltation control out here is only for the reconstruction of the golf holes 7 and 8, and that's not underway yet. So once that starts, those will be installed. I don't think I'm missing anything. So
Okay.
Nope.
Did you, you reviewed Larry Graham's letter?
I saw Larry Graham's letter,
Okay. Or Larry
and I
Graham's
saw
associate's letter.
they do have a comment in there about the construction sequencing.
The-
We've
the
included-
phasing, yeah.
We've included that permit in our application and are happy to, I mean, we have to abide by it anyway, so.
Right.
uh,
If I may,
Yeah.
just for the process, because there's a couple of things I'd like to do here. If you don't mind, before we get into Mr. Graham's letter,
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend that the commission consider entertaining a motion to approve the hiring of Mr. Graham's firm with the applicant's permission to perform a third-party peer review of the submitted application for compliance with the stormwater bylaw and the regulations thereof.
I actually thought we had done that, but what we did,
No.
I guess, was we talked about it and we hadn't heard
See,
from
we've
Graham's
just
firm.
opened,
Yeah, okay,
we've-
that's right.
we've been fast-tracking this to try and
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
provide the applicant
We're-
with a
Uh-huh.
speedy, efficient permitting process here, so.
Right, and we hadn't heard from Larry Graham's firm the last time we met.
That
So
is
we couldn't
correct.
approve it because it hadn't been accepted by him. Yeah, got it, okay.
Yeah.
So I need a motion to, let's see, appoint, is that the correct word?
Approve
Approve,
the hiring
Yeah.
with the applicant's permission of H.L. Graham Associates to perform the stormwater bylaw and regulations review.
all right, and do I have a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I have a question.
Okay.
The applicant did approve, right?
Of course, yes.
Well, if you say no, we'll stop right now.
Well, I've repeated that twice in the context
I
of
was gonna
providing it
ask
to the record of
if
this
you really
hearing.
needed me, but, yes, obviously,
Yeah,
it just made sense.
yeah, well, yeah, I knew you had, because we wouldn't have contacted them and
Right.
said, go ahead and do it. All right, so any other questions?
No.
All right, and there was a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
And all against? The
Okay,
motion carries.
That's approved.
Okay, so that's done.
so then, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read into the record Mr. Graham's communication, if I may.
Okay,
And that is dated March 4th, 2013. Attention to myself as conservation agent regarding stormwater bylaw review, Carriage Pines, OSRD, 237 Dodge Road, Raleigh, Mass. H.L. Graham, project number 88-06013-69-CC. Dear Mr. Bazelak, we have completed our review of the submitted material for the reference development for compliance with the Raleigh regulations for stormwater management and erosion control bylaw, hereinafter bylaw. The submitted material reviewed is as follows, and he lists 5 items which constitute the application submittal package that was received by the commission as well as by H.L. Graham Associates. And then his report continues, the submitted material appears to satisfy the requirements of the bylaw as stipulated in Part 1, application, period. Specific attention is paid to Section 6 of Part 1, as this project has been reviewed and definitively approved by the planning board and the special permit and site plan provisions of the Raleigh Protective Zoning bylaws as they relate to OSRD. As such, our review focuses on the compliance of the submitted material with parts 2, 3, and 4 of the bylaw. Our review indicates that the submitted material is in general compliance with parts 2, 3, and 4 of the bylaw. We offer only one observation, however, for the commission's consideration. Part 2A2 stipulates that activities be sequenced to minimize simultaneous areas of disturbance. We recommend that the phasing plan worked out during the planning board's review process, parentheses, and part of both site plan and special permit certificates of vote, end of parentheses, be submitted and made part of this filing with a condition of the stormwater and erosion control permit. Please contact us if you have any concerns or comments regarding this matter. Sincerely, H.L. Graham Associates, Gerald McDonald, professional or senior project engineer. That's the end of that communication. Just for our edification and consideration, I went down and met with Mr. McDonald, both to pick up this report as well as to go over that recommendation and also some questions that I had in regards to this. Seeing that their recommendation was relatively clear-cut and not, in my estimation, pretty understandable or whatever, I hope this wasn't my overstepping my bounds, but I told them I didn't believe that we needed H.L. Graham Associates to be in person at the meeting tonight. And my understanding, Mr. Williams, is that in your SWEP plan 2.2, page 10, the construction phasing or sequencing that's mentioned there doesn't exactly apparently go along with what was worked in the planning board process. And since I wasn't present at the planning board hearings, I can only take Graham Associates' word on that. And I think what they were looking for was just a clearer definition of what parts were phased and segmented and not disturbed.
Right, because there is phasing, and then there's phasing within the phasing. So within each phase, we've got particular tasks that have to take place, and they're going to take place in a certain order, and then you're going to move to the next phase. And it's almost impossible to put one together that is, step by step what's going to happen.
Right.
So it's more of a general guideline. Here's what's going to happen.
Yes.
But it does have to be in compliance with the phasing. Excuse me, that was approved by the planning board.
Right. So I think the underlying recommendation here is just to have that particular page of the SWEP plan just revised to represent a little bit more what that phasing is that is discussed without trying to get you held to real specific things. I think, if you just read it, it just kind of goes roadway, utilities,
I know,
houses,
but
and
to explain it, we should just take the planning board approval and say, reference it as part of the permit and say that our understanding is that it has to be, part of the permit. You have to comply with the planning board special permit.
right.
Because, for instance, we're going to build this, and this is the first section. And within that, there is, you're gonna build the road, you're gonna build the utilities. But there's some question whether or not this is second, you know, this unit happens, this unit happens. It may be that this happens, but it lays out specifically, if you're gonna build this unit, here's what has to have happened.
Right.
And specifically takes you through that. What it doesn't do is take you through the order of clearing and grubbing, laying utilities, like the order that it's gonna happen. So they kind of have to happen on top of each other.
Well, I think what he's saying is what you just said, which
Well,
is
I was gonna say,
just make a reference
Yeah.
to it.
because what we have right now is we get down to point number 4, and it says clear and grub the proposed project area. And I don't believe you folks are clearing and grubbing everything that's within the outer perimeter of the limit of work right off the bat.
Right.
And of course, the guidance from Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan anyway is to have phased and minimize soil disturbance only as, you know.
Okay.
So,
I understand what you're saying.
so that's all we're looking for, is just more than likely that point 4 not to be the only point that talks about the clearing and grubbing, that if, you know, if you've got the general idea that, you know, there's either going to be a north
I can
and
say in
south
accordance,
section.
I can say clear and grub in accordance with the, clear and grub site, in accordance with the phasing as approved by the planning board.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And not just clearing and grubbing, but actually all aspects of phasing are in accordance with the
How about
submission.
this? How about if I just add at the beginning of that section, the phasing, if I add that, you know, notwithstanding below, all of the phasing needs to be done in accordance with the,
Yes.
and then it'll apply to everything
And
below.
in case of any conflict, the planning board, what the planning board approved will control, so that it's clear that that's what you're gonna
Okay.
follow. And just having in mind that potentially contractors and people are gonna be reading this, trying to get guidance on it. And if they have two conflicting paragraphs, they need to know which one to follow.
Right, but Frank, your point is that to be sure that we're not talking about clearing and grubbing the entire site at once. You're
Right.
saying it should be done only at the active areas.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
which is what the planning board has already required.
That's correct. However, we could clear and grub the whole site. If they had reservations on every building and they had the desire to build the whole road in one shot, they could just go do it and build all the houses. They could do it all at one time.
Right.
But they're not going to.
Well,
So-
exactly, because,
I just wanna
because
be-
the realities of getting material onto the site,
Right.
working on each foundation or whatever, is that it's actually going to have some type of progression.
Right.
It's not going to be just immediately Sherman's march to Atlanta through there, so.
Well, and if it were, you wouldn't
Yeah,
need
well,
phasing, but
I-
nobody can build that.
That's right. I just do, I don't want to make you think that it's gonna be, you know, this first push is gonna be a little bit, you know, there's gonna be a lot going on, because they have to build
Yeah.
all of the stormwater, they have to build the whole
Right.
septic, they have to put the infrastructure in for water and sewer and drainage, at least most of the drainage, but, you know, there's a lot that's going on there, so, the whole interior here is gonna be, very busy, and,
Yes, and again, that's fine, we're just trying to
Right.
get, so that all these two different, or 3 different permits, if you want to look at it that way, that they just sync together as well as
Understood.
meet the EPA's guidance of minimizing disturbance.
Yeah,
so that-
yeah, and we don't want to ask you to invent a new phasing plan for us. You already have one
right, okay.
that Mr. Graham's satisfied with, and therefore we're satisfied with, so.
Do we have a copy of that phasing plan?
It's in the application.
Yes. Yeah.
It's in
Yes.
this one?
Yes, it's in, it was
Yeah,
part of
the,
the approval,
Yeah, both the site plan approval and the OSRD.
yeah, the
Special
certificate of votes
permit are in there.
have specific phasing in it.
Okay.
They are. Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the next communication that we received was from Commissioner Garner.
Yes, and have you seen this, Rich?
I did.
You did, okay, good. So go ahead, Brent.
Oh, do you want to,
Well, I could
do you want to read it? Review it, it's your copy.
Well, I don't want to read word by word, but I'll just.
No, but maybe
go
you
through the
just
highlights.
want to touch upon your recommendation?
Yes, there were two issues I just wanted to bring up, and that was for the erosion and sediment control plan. The town regulations for areas that remain exposed. This document, erosion control plan, said 30 days. It should be 14 days, which is in accordance with the regulations.
Okay.
That it be stabilized within 14 days, as opposed to 30 working days, I think is what it said.
Yeah.
So
In 14 days, not working.
14, not working days, but
Yes.
14 consecutive days. Yeah.
Right,
Right.
so 30 working days is like 45 calendar days. But it doesn't matter, because that's not what our regulation requires, so I don't think we could approve that.
Right. We just want to have the
Yeah.
inactive areas stabilized within 14 days.
Okay.
And
And that's not referring to permanent stabilization? That can just be, temporary, either distribution of hay mulch or something like that. It's both to minimize wind-blown erosion as well as erosion due to precipitation, rain events and stuff.
And it should work within the phasing aspect of the whole.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. But in reality, there's always bound to be areas that won't be touched, that will be exposed for over 2 weeks. It can happen, obviously. So those areas would want to be addressed, they have it stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
In a similar fashion, there was a paragraph right after that statement in the erosion and sediment control plan. It was the 5th paragraph. It has a similar passage where 30 days should be changed to 14 days for stabilization. And in the SWIP, there was a conflict with the description of the stabilized construction exit. It wasn't in agreement with the drawing detail,
Mm-hmm.
so I think we would prefer to see the drawing detail be the method to be used
I
for the
agree.
exit. Okay. All right. Those are the highlights.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other comments that you want to add, Brent?
Yes, I do, but do any of the other commissioners wish to go before?
Not me.
At this point.
Okay. So yes, I apologize for not having written comments, but I was focused on assembling this as well as another task today. So the one thing I have a question, Mr. Williams, is post-construction. I didn't find anything in the SWEP plan or the O&M plan that identified who the responsible party is post-construction.
It's the homeowners association.
Okay.
They will get a copy of the O&M,
Mhm.
and they, the residences, the current owner, until the units are 70% sold, is responsible for maintaining the pond.
So that will create an association,
Yes, there's,
right? The individual unit owners, if they happen to be near the catch basins, they won't inherit. The individual unit won't inherit the responsibility for
correct.
the closest catch basin.
that's correct. So the 36 units, when it's 36, will pitch in every year to hire someone to go out and do a report,
Okay.
or,
So my recommendation to the commission then is that, that we consider a condition within our proposed stormwater management permit to require the submittal of the homeowner association documentation for our review and approval to make sure that it does in fact specify the stormwater management responsibilities, ongoing inspection, maintenance, and keeping the capacity of those facilities, and that it specifies shall and not any mays or maybes. That isn't something that I recommend that we hold up permit issuance waiting for that, because it more than likely will be put together in the future here.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that we have a condition that requires its submittal for review and approval, just so we can make sure
Yeah.
that those
Probably-
responsibilities and duties are
Yeah,
specified.
it's probably months, if not years away, but.
Exactly.
that's-
It's actually, sooner than you'd think. They've got a couple of offers, so they've got to put a purchase and sale together, which requires them to draft the homeowners.
That's true, yeah, you're right. With the first offer, they're gonna have to
Yeah,
have the
so
document.
it's gonna happen pretty quickly.
Okay.
They're working on it now, I know that, so
Okay.
I'll get a copy over to you.
It's like buying into a horizontal condominium.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
continue on focusing on the operations and maintenance plan. I'd also recommend that a inspection matrix sheet be prepared. We've done this with, we've actually consistently required this, that an 8.5 by 11 sheet be prepared that lists the BMPs, has small reference to what their inspection periods are, type things that can be used as a checklist for whoever the association chooses to engage the services to do their maintenance landscaping work, that firm will just be able to look at a sheet. You do have checklists and stuff in there for during the construction
Yeah, we don't have
phase and
post,
stuff,
yeah.
but there isn't anything for post-construction. We've had other firms pretty easily, because you don't have a lot of BMPs, pretty
Right, no,
easily
it
put
should
it
be
together on one 8.5 by 11 sheet.
That makes sense.
So we'd like to ask for that to be prepared and submitted. In regards to the constructed wetlands basin, I would recommend that the commission consider requiring monitoring of the planted wetlands species there for 2 growing seasons to see about their establishment or whatever, because from looking at the planning board permit issuance and talking to Graham Associates, there's a little concern that in some areas there may not be the groundwater availability, and therefore the wetlands plant community might not establish and sustain itself. And so if we look at it kind of like a planting, which is what it is, we would normally require 2 growing seasons monitoring to see that the planting stock actually successfully establishes itself.
Yeah, let me just comment on that, and we can do that. However, what we agreed at the planning board process was that it doesn't matter if it's grass or wetland species, where we don't need to get it to the wetland. We wanted to get it down because we wanted to have a wetland-like atmosphere for, because we thought it was gonna be a nice thing
Right.
for the homeowners. But if it grows with Kentucky bluegrass or cat and nine tails, doesn't make a difference from a treatment standpoint. It gets the same treatment. So I think that's a bad idea to, I'm happy to monitor it and make sure that it vegetates, because it is important that it vegetates, but whether it's grass or wetland species doesn't make a difference from a
Oh,
treatment standpoint.
I'm not,
Okay, yeah.
well, right now, your plan that's been submitted to us specifies some particular plant species. So that's what we'd be looking for now. Maybe I should have continued on, because then my suggestion is that if it fails to establish, that therefore any proposed modifications be submitted to us just for review and approval. Because if you need to change your contouring of that from your high and low areas, or change the sort of constructed channels there, because you end up just needing to just have it spread out and basically be a flat bottom infiltration basin. We would just like to see review and approval of whatever modifications are proposed, if the plant species and how it's designed right now as a wetlands, constructed wetlands, if that isn't successful. Basically, it doesn't
I
work
mean,
and you're
I-
gonna modify it, we just wanna know.
I'm not
that
gonna
you're
modify it, but if we,
Then the requirement would be fine,
okay.
because you won't have to worry about it.
I know, but I just want to be clear. If the wetland species don't grow and grass grows, then we haven't modified it, because our permit with the planning board, and we had a long discussion about it, was that if the wetland species don't grow, grass is going to grow. It just needs to vegetate, whether it's grass or wetlands. You still get the same
Yep.
credit for treatment.
Right. So we'll just hold you to the same standard,
Okay, that's fine.
but
If
we're
we need
just
to change-
asking if
yeah.
it does need to be changed or modified.
Anything but invasives, as long as you don't grow those.
Well, does this come under our wetland responsibilities or our stormwater
No,
responsibilities?
don't
This
get
is
confused
stormwater,
with that,
yeah.
no. This is
Well, it
just- this is
sounds
stormwater.
like it's.
Well, that's because it's constructed, they're proposing a constructed wetlands.
Right, but what Rich is
But-
just saying
Well,
is,
if it doesn't affect
but
anything.
it isn't gonna
else,
be a
let's see
wetlands
what it's relevant.
necessarily. It's just gonna be vegetated.
We think it is, but
Yeah, but you don't know. You can't tell till it grows
Right.
there. Right. As long as you don't grow water chestnuts or something.
No, that's
There'll be
not.
some
Okay.
free ones available.
So, again, didn't mean a lot of time on that, because, we usually require monitoring of basin anyway, so.
yeah, I mean,
So again, this is.
we've got to do an as-built and provide it to the planning board and write a letter saying that it's functioning like it's supposed to be functioning at the end of the project anyway, so.
Right.
That's not the deep water pond, right?
That is the deep water pond, yeah.
We are talking about the deep water.
When I say deep water, it's deeper, it's lower in the ground. We agreed to not have a deep water pond. When we started the project, we were going to, but there was concern over drownings and,
Yeah, the fencing and, yeah.
Safety issues.
so we picked it up. It's
Big
not deep
holes in the
water,
ground.
but it's near the groundwater.
So it's not gonna be fenced.
Okay.
In regards to, I noticed your SWEP plan prohibits concrete washout. How is that going to be accomplished with the contractors and stuff? Are you putting in place some means of notification or requirement within whatever contractual arrangement you make for the delivery of concrete, that their drivers will be informed that they're not to wash out their trucks on the site?
Yeah, we've talked to, I mean, we've gone over this report with the contractor. We've got a close relationship with them, so
Okay.
they're very particular folks, and they, I think fortunately for Raleigh, they keep one of the cleanest, they keep the cleanest projects that I've ever been on. And they're very, very particular.
Okay, well, number one, I just kind of wanted to know how you were going to accomplish this. And number two, there is going to need to be some assurance that they aren't just going to go find some other vacant site in Raleigh.
Well, they're pretty close by their shop, so
Oh, okay, all right.
it'll be Raleigh Ready Mix, so
Oh, all
they'll
right.
be able to go back there and
Then
wash
you
out.
say no more.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Not gonna-
They will be going.
But hopefully it will be Rowley Ready Mix, and
Yeah.
Right.
that problem will go away.
Exactly.
But of course, the
It doesn't.
concrete delivery trucks don't work for the contractor. They're paying for their services. So when the first thing they want to do is when they get rid of the concrete, where they poured their concrete, the first thing they want to do is wash out their truck. So
Oh, I know.
they're going to ask, they're going to say, where's my washout area? If they're not Rowley Ready Mix and they're from somewhere else.
I know, we've had that conversation.
So that will happen,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Again,
They'll
I was
ask for a place
just
to
asking
wash
the
out.
question to make sure that there was a handle on this and not just wishful thinking. So, because of the proposal for the constructed wetlands or plant community in the basin, I believe the commission should consider a prohibition on the use of rock salt on the project, because I believe that will be detrimental to the establishment of a plant community in your basin. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use more environmentally benign ice preventative measures, but that's my initial feeling, is that the plants going into the basin are not gonna be particularly fond of getting dosed with rock salt there.
Do we need a prohibition on the whole site, though?
Well, pretty much the whole roadway
Everything
system.
drains
Because everything drains into
is,
it.
well, I mean, not everywhere, as he
Close to
mentioned,
it.
he's got some buildings with the rooftop runoff going the other direction, but
What do you do on
but the
Dodge Road?
roadway system is.
What do you do on Dodge Road? Salt that?
Well,
It possibly could be salted, yeah.
I mean, what does the town do?
Yeah.
When it plows? I don't know.
The town does use a combination of sand and
Right,
salt.
and that's a public road, so the town plows it, so.
Do you think that's a problem? I mean, I'm trying to balance the fact that
I think that
you
it
wanna
is,
put a
because-
plant community in there, and I'm kind of thinking that it's going to be sensitive to getting hit with rock salt residue. Now, I can't say
think
what,
that-
we've got a couple of projects here in town that already have a prohibition against the use of rock salt. They use other ice preventative measures in there. They did earn that condition by being in our groundwater recharge area,
Mhm.
but none of them have constructed wetlands. I mean, I'm only having this conversation or this
You're
suggestion
thinking
because,
of, Pingree
because of the idea of getting this plant community established in the stormwater basin. I mean, if you,
Well, the plant community is gonna be established, I think, before all of this stuff goes online. There might be one set of basins online, but the first thing they're gonna do is dig the pond out and seed it. So they're probably gonna get the spring growing season out of it before anything happens. I just know I just did one, and we planted it with wet mix, and it was the same construction season, and before the first construction season, the thing was extremely thick and growing fine. I'm not concerned about the plant community coming in. And especially in a case where most of this is infiltration, and only in the larger storms does this outflow. So, I mean, I guess my answer would be I'd rather not. But if the project can't go forward without that, then they probably agree.
With the,
I think it gets difficult on the, these
this is
roads
only a
are.
recommendation on my part.
Yeah, I understand.
I just,
I wonder what the golf course managers think of that too. Because they're the same,
I don't think they really care because it's the middle of the winter. They're not running the golf course.
well,
When there's
yeah, I suppose. That's true.
when there's a couple feet of snow, it's not open. So I don't think they care. But the roads are narrow, and I think it gets tougher to manage without salt when they're that narrow. When they're narrow for a purpose.
So the type of vegetation that's going in there, or that you propose, is it sensitive to high salinity? Do you know?
Well, it's going to be New England wet
he's
mix,
got
so
blueberries, he's got iris. I'm having a hard time remembering what the third one was, besides the herbaceous wetlands mix. Here again, this is only because I hate to see a project go to the effort of establishing that type of plant community and then have it
Die out?
handicapped by being dosed
Well,
with
don't
salt
do-
and finding it dying back later
I
on.
don't
I mean,
think-
don't
I don't
do it
think
for us,
Dodge
but-
Road is going to affect it because it's what is coming in from
no, there's
the
runoff
site.
that comes from Dodge Road that goes onto our property.
only at the far end.
There's a low
It's
point
usually-
down near the
Yeah, the low
entrance.
point. Usually it doesn't flow onto the site, it flows off the site,
Well,
from what I've seen.
No, it comes down here and flows through this wall, and it'll be picked up in these catch basins.
Okay, so I don't know the exact elevation, but that's not the point here. The point is, if there's salinity, there's high enough salinity in that catch basin, that infiltration basin, then is, what Brent is trying to get past here is the type of vegetation that you have in there, is it gonna last the 1 or 2 vegetation growth periods? If it doesn't,
If you're asking me, I think it is. We do it all the time with projects like this that allow salting.
so if it doesn't, since it's being reported on, what's gonna happen?
well, they would have to reestablish it and either choose different species or do, you know.
So what is
do a
more
replacement
beneficial?
planting.
Replanting or reducing the salt?
Yeah.
Is really the question.
Yeah.
But I think.
I'd rather take the risk with the planting, because I think it's such a short-term issue where the salting is it's a lifetime issue there.
I think what Rich is saying is, don't do us that favor. We'll take our chance. And I think that's basically my view would be,
Yeah.
that's your call. Because you're gonna have to face the consequences if
Right.
it gets salted out.
Yeah, and I was just putting this out
Well,
for
it's
discussion.
It's actually an
just,
interesting kind of discussion. I thought about that.
At what point does the homeowners association become legally binding? When there's build out of the whole thing?
More than 70% they take over, but the contractor's still gonna be there, and he is gonna be responsible for paying whatever the unbuilt, part of it is. He's gonna be there, he'll be there until the end, so, by the time the last units go in, this place is gonna be, it's gonna be done.
You're saying that the contractor essentially would be the party to look to for replanting if necessary?
Yeah, definitely gonna be there, unless,
Unless you
Yeah,
sell all
something.
34 units in the first year. Whatever,
it would,
38
in the
units.
first 2 years, I can't imagine that 36 units are gonna go.
Well,
But-
then the requirement should be put into the homeowners association.
That's the point.
Well, they, again, do inherit the ongoing maintenance and inspection responsibilities for the stormwater facility, so, I mean, yeah, either way, again, I was just mentioning it, it was just a concern that I had, I didn't wanna see.
And
I didn't wanna not have a discussion about it and then, go, oh, I could have had a V8 and I could have prohibited rock salt later on after all the high bush blueberries died. I mean, they may not.
Well, the
Exactly.
homeowners association might want to do that. Get a lot of environmentalists on it.
So, so that's fine, then the commission is okay with the applicants.
I'm okay with it.
We
I'm
will,
just
we
speaking
will
for
not,
myself.
we will not put any prohibition on ice treatment.
Are there any commissioners who feel differently? Would you?
I don't see, there's gonna be a warranty period for the contractors, or the landscaper. Basically whoever installs the constructed wetland plants, there's gonna be a warranty period beyond construction, right?
Yeah.
Probably a number of growing seasons or something, that he's gonna be responsible for the health of that constructed wetland?
yes,
Okay. So we'll know
I mean-
during that warranty period, probably if the rock salt's having an impact. And it would be the contractor's dime to repair it.
Good point.
That's really the question.
Yep.
Whether you wanna deal with it now or deal with it later.
Or very possibly not deal with it at all, because it's just gonna grow.
Or, throw the
Is
dice.
what
Exactly.
you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. That's really all it is.
All right, well, as I say, my view is it's not something we need to make a condition, but if other commissioners disagree, we can.
Okay.
And my final question is about snow storage.
Snow storage, always a
Is
good
there-
question.
edge of the road.
So no designation or whatever, and that's not going to interfere with any of the functioning of the of the stormwater management system in terms of?
No, because it's all contained within the road.
Mhm.
It's not, we don't have country drainage, so,
So no grass swales or anything else that are just exactly where they'd like to?
no. No. I mean, edge of the road is the best place for it.
Well, this is neither here nor there, but it's gonna be insufficient when you get 2 or 3 snowstorms back to back on those narrow little roads. You're gonna have to push it way back on the lawns.
Yeah. It's that or wide roads. People like narrow roads.
Anyway, it's not critical.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we try to keep the roads as narrow as possible. I mean, it's just a struggle that we always have, you know. Wide roads, you can park on them and you can put snow on them, but it ends up not being a country setting and
It's not aesthetic.
not environmentally the best thing to do.
How wide are the roads, by the way?
22
22? Okay.
for the main road,
Mhm.
and the cul-de-sac is a one-way, so
Oh.
part of that is 16, and then at the end here, it bumps out to 20
For the turn.
for the turn, so that the equipment can make the turn.
I'm sure it'll look much nicer that way, but they'll end up with snow on their lawns. That's
It's probably a stupid
truly
question,
not our problem.
but how do you get out of a cul-de-sac if it's one way?
Oh, so
I
it's-
used to live on a one-way dead end. Okay?
How'd you ever get here?
It's a loop.
There's a hammerhead turnaround at the end here. This is one way. I call it a cul-de-sac. It used to be a cul-de-sac with a turnaround, but it's a loop.
Yeah.
Just sounded funny.
But I did live on a one-way dead end.
How did that go?
All going out or in?
Had to back out? You said that was
Did
your
you
last...
leave your cars outside, or what did you do?
It turned into a dead end. It was a one-way, and right after my house, it turned into a dead end, and there was a street that came off of it. But we used to say that, we live on a one-way dead end.
I've got a question, perhaps you could refresh my memory on it. It has nothing to do with a stormwater permit or the wetlands permit, but you've got 17 duplexes here, roughly?
18.
So 36 units?
Yeah.
How did it happen that there was no requirement for affirmative affordable housing for any of these?
It was done under the OSRD, which doesn't require it.
Right.
Okay.
That was the original version of this project was different in that regard, not by these,
But
not
it
by
had
these owners,
off-site,
by the,
off-site
they had
affordable
off-site
units.
and portable units, right, but that's a different owner.
Well, because they were looking for bonus units on this site.
Correct.
So in order to get the bonus units, you have to do affordable. So that's one of the ways.
They had like 54 units or
They had
something.
54, correct.
Right.
And the maximum, according to the yield here, was, I think, 45. So you can have up to 45 without doing extra units or affordable units.
Anything else, Brent?
No.
All right, any other questions by commissioners?
No.
Let's see. So there were, you got a few minor plan revisions, mostly just what Commissioner Garner had to say, and then not so much plan revisions as
Here's what I got. Can I just go through it? So
yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just
Um,
trying to get them all in my mind, make sure we covered them all.
Number one is Larry's comment, which I think you can just do in the permit. You can just say, you can reference the planning board permits, special permit and site plan approval, which are in the application package.
Well, actually, what I was hoping is that you would revise that single page of the SWEP plan to reference.
I'm going to do that. But his comment is that that it should be submitted and made part of this filing in a condition of the stormwater, which
Right.
we've submitted it, and you should make that permit part of the approval.
End a condition, he does say end a condition, so we can make it a condition and you're gonna amend the
And
plan.
then I'm gonna
Right,
send
but
that
what
as well,
I'm
on
concerned
top of
about is that our permit is going to reference this SWEP plan,
Mhm.
that, and the particular phasing that's laid out on page 10.
Yep.
it. That was just my first item, I'm gonna go through all of them.
Yep, yeah, right,
Okay.
okay, so
And
we're
then-
on the same page there.
And then, the next three items are the items that Mr. Garner pointed out, which are the two places that it says 30 days, I'll change to 14.
Yeah. Right.
The third is to fix the conflict with the stabilized entrance, and we'll make it conform to the plan.
Yep, right.
Number 4 would be to add that paragraph to the phasing and the construction sequencing that references the planning board's approval and specifically the phasing that's within that.
Yep.
Okay? Number 5 would be to supply you guys with the homeowners association docs.
Yes.
And number 6 would be to provide a post-construction matrix
Matrix, yeah.
for the BMPs.
Now, the homeowners.
Number
docs-
7 would be to provide you with the green cards.
Oh, yeah.
One.
Could be no.
The homeowners or association documents are, I do not believe, have any immediacy
No.
to
no.
things, so I was just gonna have that as a condition
Yeah.
in the issued permit. Our normal thing for just the little editing and stuff has to go on is to ask for that to be supplied within 14 days.
I think you'll have it tomorrow.
Okay.
Right.
Just so you don't have to come back, in other words, we're.
Well, no, well, I was also just gonna say that I don't think any of this should actually interfere
Right.
with the commission considering permit issuance tonight in
Right.
terms of approval, and then my just putting it together. I do have to work on the language of some of the things that we've discussed tonight, but my couple of things were, you've already covered the paperwork aspect of it. We're in the conditions, again, to have monitoring of the plantings in the basin to assure that it's completely vegetated and to require at least one overwintering period to, gauge the success of the establishment of the planting stock. And then we normally have typical requirements that are already expressed in your SWEP plan, requiring that there be porta potties out there for the staff, requiring spill prevention kits that will address whatever the quantities of hydraulic fluids and gas and stuff are in the equipment on site. We really don't have any sensitive areas, and so the only other thing is to, require that the stormwater facilities be an ongoing condition for their inspection, maintenance, and kept functioning effectively. And then we have typical conditions requiring the erosion control to be inspected. We do ask for monthly monitoring reports in regards to knowing that things have been inspected, but that doesn't have to be submitted to the office. That can just be kept in the construction trailer on site, but we just need some kind of assurance that someone does do a perimeter walk around and stuff. I know they're supposed to do it weekly, but we just ask that there at least be a documented report that demonstrates that monthly, there's a.
Yeah, they're gonna have in the trailer weekly reports because they have to do it, and I'll guarantee, I won't say guarantee, but again, these folks, and I don't say this about everyone, they are very thorough, so they will be there, they'll be in the trailer, and they'll be weekly and after the larger storms.
Okay, so those are all of a nature that I don't see any reason we can't vote to approve the stormwater permit tonight, conditional upon well, the green cards, for
Mhm.
example, and a revised plan within 14 days. But it's all pretty minor in nature.
Right,
Um,
right.
And then Brent will start putting together the actual conditions. So, anything else? Anything else anyone wants to add? You're looking carefully at the plan there, Mr. Domingo.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering what the depth was, because I anticipated it would be somewhere close to 7 feet, and it's 6.
Okay, in that case, do I have a motion to approve the stormwater management plan? Is that what we're-
Permit.
Permit.
SMP.
Keep trying to say plan, yeah, permit. As amended in accordance with the discussion tonight.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And all in favor?
I,
Aye. And all against? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty, this is the 8 o'clock item. A new request for a certificate of compliance for 63-0377, 121 Haverhill Street, map 16, parcel 65, Mary Zawacki. And welcome, sorry to make you wait there.
no problem.
And let's see, so this is a certificate of compliance for, have you seen Brent's memo on this?
I have not.
Okay, would you like to take a look at it?
Absolutely. For the record, my name is Matt Steinhall. I'm from Millennium Engineering.
Okay, welcome to that.
Just to give the commissioners a kind of a history as to what happened on this particular project, you'll notice the date on the plan is 2002. The system was put in and installed back in 2002. Millennium produced the as-built that you're looking at now. At that time, the system was in compliance and met the requirements for the Board of Health. It was submitted to them to get the sign-off. The applicant was advised that you needed to allow a growing season to get the site stabilized before coming to the commission to get a certificate from you folks, and she was living there, not selling it, so I think she just forgot about it, and it sat unattended to until now. Recently, a potential buyer came in because the applicant has placed the property on the market and spoke with Brent, which kind of opened up the whole thing about this was still an outstanding issue. In doing the research, Brent and I both looked at the registry of deeds. We were unable to find a copy of the recorded order of conditions, so we obtained a certified copy from Brent and had that recorded immediately, and then proceeded to submit to the board an application for certificate based on the plan and site walk that we've done recently on the site.
Okay. Brent, anything to add to your memo?
Not to add to it, but just to,
Thank you.
just to mention that everything seems fine. I provided the picture from my site visit the other day in an attempt to allow the snow cover to disperse, which it pretty much had. It's also got aerial pictometry documentation, since we have pictometry from 2003, 2007, and 2012 that show that it's vegetated there. The order of conditions does establish a 15-foot restricted no cut, no disturbance area, which is marked on the plans, and I highlighted in pink. off the delineated bordering vegetated wetlands. And also there's another ongoing condition of fertilizers for landscaping and lawn care shall be low in nitrogen content and shall be used in moderation, and pesticides and herbicides shall not be used within the 100 feet of the wetlands or the buffer zone. And that would be the two ongoing conditions, and I would offer a recommendation for consideration of a complete certificate of compliance.
Any questions by any commissioners? In that case, is there a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance?
No. Dave moved, I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all against? And the motion carries. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your patience.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
Haven't seen him before. I like the people Wally intends to hire.
I was just,
So much easier with
the stuff that I used to do,
contact people.
I normally can just look at the lay of the land and kind of get a sense of what the groundwater would be. And I anticipated it would be similar around 7 feet. And this is pretty close.
Yeah.
It's 57 and a half to 63, 8, I think.
We were trying to keep 4 foot separation from the bottom of the pond.
Mhm.
No, 6 inches. For the
Yeah, that makes-
constructed wetland, that's what it is.
I want to get it closer.
It was the other pond, it's in a 4 foot separation.
Shallow.
It's shallow, one,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's only like a foot or something.
I'm not
All right,
sure.
this is
It's
the,
still shallow.
Shallow.
8:15 item on the agenda, continued consideration of a gift of land off Newburyport Turnpike, map 14, parcel 22, from the estate of Elizabeth B. Cook as conserved open space land consisting of approximately 1.99 acres. So when this was last on the agenda, I offered to contact Mr. Arthur Ross, who's the attorney representing the estate, which I have done, and I spoke to Mr. Ross. And what he indicated, I think I circulated an email to the member, I think I included all the members in the email, but I'll just repeat it for the record. He indicated that the description in the deed is really the only description that he has for the property, and it's not a meets and bounds description. It would require a title examination in order to determine the actual property location, and then it would probably require a survey as well. And he has neither of those things. He indicates that the estate of Elizabeth Cook consisted of various property, all of which was left to the Anna Jakes Hospital. And this particular parcel is the last piece left. So he did not think that the heir, which I guess would be Anna Jakes Hospital, would be interested in expending any funds to try to get a better property description than what we have. And I think he's probably right about that. So I think the question for us to consider is what to do next. I advised him that in our experience, our town council has some hesitation sometimes about accepting gifts of land or property of this type that is not adequately described. And I think the thing that troubles me, and I pointed out to him, is the assessor's map seems to indicate about 2 acres of land. The deed description indicates half an acre of land. That's a pretty big discrepancy. Not uncommon, and certainly the deed description could just be crazy. But there's no way to really determine that unless we do some work and spend some money.
Field work.
Field work, you know. wet field work. Because as he said, you should go look at this property, but bring your waders. So I throw it out for discussion. I'm not sure what to do except perhaps refer to Judy Pickett and ask her what her thoughts are on what the downside would be of simply accepting it. The only other thing I'd add is what Arthur Ross told me, and I think this makes total sense, is practically speaking, if we don't accept it, it is most likely that the owner will simply let it revert to the town for taxes. And we sort of would end up in the same position anyway, except it wouldn't be conserved land at that point. It certainly isn't buildable. They don't think it's of any economic value, and there's really no reason in the world they would keep paying their taxes on it, however minimal they may be. So, anyone else have any thoughts on what we should do?
Short-term practical thought. I think it would be helpful maybe if Brent's office assistant could go over to the assessor's office and poke around their records and talk to them to see if there's any more detail in their records or inaccuracies that could be reconciled fairly easily that way. Do we have a copy of the
Yeah, I didn't bring mine.
description that we could provide her, or someone else to do something like that?
Frank does.
Well, I've gone 3 deeds back.
You know, it's the same. It's
Where, at the assessor's office?
No,
I don't have to go to the
registry.
assessor's office, I can go right online and access some Salem Registry of Deeds.
Yeah, but if
You
the
gotta put
assessor's
it out
records
there.
are incorrect, then it's easily resolved.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
I understand what your concern is, but I think it's a different question to ask. I think the question is to ask the assessors how they come up with the area.
Well, it's
Because
the same
it may,
thing.
no, not necessarily, because what I was going to speculate was that it may be based on the GIS work that Merrimack Valley Planning Commission does. They may simply look at that polygon that's established for the mind mapping program, which the assessors pays Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to do, and then that probably generates
Square feet.
an estimated area figure, yeah,
Well, that would solve the problem.
yeah. So,
Well, you can look at the polygon. It's
Because-
about 200 by 400 feet
yeah,
if you scale it, and that's 2 acres.
That's 2 acres.
right.
So I'm not sure where the assessors are going to change their mind about that. If they shrink it, then something else has to get bigger,
Right.
right?
Well, the assessors in the last analysis have to be bound by the deeds, regardless of what their polygrams.
You only own what you
polygrams
own.
show. And on that basis, I think we could accept the deed description and take it on that basis and, see if we could get the assessor's situation resolved off to the side.
Yeah, it doesn't even really matter what the assessors think. It's just sort of a sign that it's not clear what the property consists of.
And
Well, Doug gave me the go-ahead today to ask for permission to consult town council about
Yeah.
what, for lack of a better term, what the risk might be of considering accepting this land through this particular process, irrespective of whether we've got a potential property owner that says they're just gonna let it go to tax title taking. What's being offered right now is a gift of land for conservation purposes that we can't find a clear meets and bounds description, and there also seems to be this discrepancy in area between what the assessors say and what the 3 deeds that I've accessed. But the 3 deeds are just cut and pasting and just copying the same.
They say the same thing.
They say the same thing, and for all we know, it was some guy stood out there, looked at the property and says, "Oh, this is at least a half an acre."
didn't want to get
Probably
wet.
about right. Because all it says is, by land of so-and-so, by land of so-and-so. It doesn't
Yeah.
have any measurement.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
typical
yeah, it
for
doesn't
deeds
even
of
say
that period.
number of rods or anything.
But in order to ascertain the title status of this property, you have to go back to the adjoining properties and trace back their descriptions until you come back to something that.
And you have all the abutting boundaries, and maybe,
Well, eventually you
even
work
not
something
then,
out.
you may not even succeed doing that too.
It can take a while.
Yeah.
It can be a lot of work. There is the turnpike is there, so there is something that's been there for a while that you'll come to. You know where the turnpike is. There isn't too much else.
Yeah.
It's mostly just wetland. In fact, it's all just wetland. So it might be an undertaking.
Yeah. Well, and this is just a speculative question here, but since we already noticed that one property away is the Bishop property that ended up becoming protected open space that's out in the middle of Batchelder's Meadow, I think is what it's called,
Right.
which is a swamp. Do any of you have experience with that? I don't believe, I think that got taken care of before I came on as agent, so did the commission get involved and know whether there was a description or plan of the Bishop property, or?
Before my time.
Okay.
Do you remember?
No recollection.
Yeah. That's a good question, but I don't know who would know the answer.
Well, I think town council, because
Yeah.
I'm sure the town council must have been involved with
Right.
that Bishop property, because I know that
Not this
was,
town council necessarily.
well, no, but I think recent work was done on it, because the Bishop property and the Fennel Drive property were what was accepted by the state for the
Right.
conversion
Right.
of the small portion of the Smith Lane property to go to that cell tower.
Oh, jeez, I forgot that. Uh-huh. That
So-
wasn't that long ago, no.
So it
Yeah.
might have been.
Yeah, that was just before I came to work here.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
So, well, anyway,
Well,
again,
and-
it was kind of speculative, but I was just thinking that,
Yeah.
maybe at least consulting town council, we might get an idea as to whether we should entertain accepting it, or whether we should just let the dominoes fall over and let it come to
Yeah.
the town as a tax title taking, and then worry about.
Yeah, I don't know what the risks would be, but she would. I mean, that's what she's there for. And you're right, she could take a look at the Bishop situation, Bishop property situation, see what was done on that and how we came to own that. Maybe that would cast some light on it.
I'm actually was going to start doing some research on that, but.
That would be good to
So
know.
if it does go to the, whatever you call it, the tax
Text title.
tax title?
Yeah.
The idea of conservation land is off the table? No, it just would be transferred to the town to get it delineated and make it conservation.
The town, we'd be in the same
Town.
position.
I think the town would look at it and see whether it had any economic development potential, and
It doesn't.
coming up with the same evaluation that we have, it's mostly
Right.
inundated wetland resource area, would probably say, well,
Maybe conservation wants it.
maybe department.
Yeah, it's just gonna end up back. right
Well,
back in.
Attorney Ross was trying to be creative, because he asked the electric department first, probably because.
Yeah, because the transmission line goes.
Because the transmission line runs
Power
over it. And Bob Mary told him, he said, no, actually, no
But Mary
particular
tried to
reason.
get to it.
Yeah,
Well, the practical matter is
It's
the fact
called-
of conservation
called
land
conservation.
already.
You're right.
And it's
Yeah.
not- and it's never gonna change, and maybe we shouldn't
The-
burden
the
the
use
town
of
with
the-
additional town council expenses.
Well, not much. I mean, that's the thing, is if we hired surveyors and title examiners to do this, we'd be spending thousands of dollars. And there's no way that makes any sense.
No, we definitely
Which is the
should
same-
not do that.
Same thing Arthur said, that's why he never did it.
Yeah.
No one, it wasn't worth it to his client to ever spend that kind of money.
I can't see any use for that property for any other people other than an abutter who needs added acres to meet some zoning requirement.
Yeah, there's always that possibility.
It's
And
land.
that's not gonna change the use of that piece of property, so.
Right.
Well,
So where does that leave us?
well, let's see what Judy Pickett has to say.
Yeah, well, yeah,
If
I
you
get.
can get authority
Yeah.
to ask her the question.
Yeah.
And if she says, well, I see no harm in doing it, then that might just be our guidance. The deed description would be exactly what it says in the previous deed, and we'd have to get the selectmen's assent to it, and that would be that.
Right.
It didn't seem like Mr. Ross was in a terrible hurry to do this, but I got the impression it's kind of one of the last
Yeah,
things
the
he
last
needs to do
chunk.
on the estate. He's just tidying up the loose ends. Okay. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda, other than status reports, permits, and enforcement.
Well, I have a few things that I want to go over with the commission. So, shall we do a motion to continue this to the next meeting, just to
Oh, I suppose
give
we
us
should.
leeway?
All right. Do I have a motion to continue the matter we were just discussing, the gift of open space land, to the meeting of
That would be March 26th.
March 26th, 2013?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? The motion carries.
It's budget time. I was just provided provided with my budget sheets and requested to prepare draft budget, so pass it out. The initial instructions are for it to be level funded with no cost of living increase. Apologize that it's stapled kind of funny, but that's what happens when it goes through the copyright here. Again, we continue the tradition of having one of the simplest budgets in the town with 2 lines, your agent and our office expenses, which, with the commission's deference and the ability to sometimes utilize the notice of intent funds for various things, and able to keep us operational.
How much money do we have in that fund?
Yeah.
We have $38,428.74 currently. There is the outstanding obligation of possible balance due to the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission for the acquisition of the pictometry. A couple of the other town departments which were participating or contributing to the acquisition of the imagery, I'm not sure what they submitted, so therefore I don't know exactly what is left. I'm gonna have to either ask Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to tell me what's still outstanding.
This is the budget for fiscal year end 13,
14.
14.
We're in 13.
So if there aren't any concerns or anything else in regards to this, I will submit this tomorrow as our
Nope, makes sense to me. Is no capital equipment to request?
No.
I don't think so. What, you don't want an SUV?
Off-road vehicle.
I'm too realistic to even bother to have anything like that verbalized as a request.
No aspirations for the unattainable.
No, no. Now maybe a Vespa. But you'd have to have all-terrain tires.
All right, do you need a motion, or is this just for discussion?
Well, normally I would say it was just for discussion, but you're probably right. It probably would be well advised to have a motion to submit this as our proposed budget for FY14.
Yeah, I think so. Do I have such a motion?
Smooth.
And a second?
Second.
Do you have a question?
I've been told that there is a personnel study underway by the town with regard to the grading and salary structure of the various officials, various people, and my understanding is that Brent would be one of them, and if there's a possibility that that in an ideal world that there might be an upward adjustment in the salary structure for the position. So I'd just like to say that be helpful to understand that the motion would include any possibility of upward adjustment that the town might see fit to, and would be capable of doing, but so that we aren't locked into necessarily this.
Yeah, that makes sense. No idea when this personnel review is going to be completed.
I think it's going to be delayed for other reasons, but
Okay. All right, well, with that in mind,
So how do you do that?
Well, I phrase this as the proposed budget, and that's because this is subject to there being qualifying guidance coming from the selectman's office if different things,
The proposed is perfect.
you know, if there's changes to either state contributions to the town or changes to the anticipated Triton Regional School System budget, which, you know, has a great effect on the town budgetary process. But the initial indications are that I was given guidance to prepare a level funded budget. Obviously, I would have loved to prepare a budget that had a slight cost of living increase in there, but I was told to do it as level funded. But
the cost of living has gone up by 1.5% in the last year. Is that right?
you mean the cost of living or the?
Cost of living as reflected in Social Security increases.
Right. But that doesn't mean the town budget went up.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was last year, though, that we started with a level funded, but was it last year? I can look at this. Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, started with a level funded budget and ended up with like a 2% increase or something. So that could happen. It does happen.
yeah, that is correct. Actually, a 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started off, the first proposed budget from this department was level funded, and then we got the word that there was the capability of doing 1.5
Right.
cost of living.
So that might happen again. So this is really just a proposed budget worksheet for just those purposes and no more. Right, it would, if we had a more complicated budget, then this would be more meaningful to the FinCom and to the selectmen, but we only really have one item in our budget, really. So I think it was moved and seconded.
Yes.
Am I right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? The motion carries.
Permits and enforcement. I'd just like to report to the commission in regards to permits. The slight issue that's arisen out at the water department's filtration plant construction project. The situation is the access road that goes across the Conservation Commission's preserved open space from Pingree Farm Road, the access road to the plant and where the water department has their pumping station. That was, or had, it still does have, installed silt fence along it. The recent melting and rain situations caused the section of the dirt road to accumulate water, which it built up in height and pressure, and then what it did was it just worked its way underneath the hay bales and the installed siltation fence and hydrostatic pressure, because there was so much water. It just pushed itself down through, because that was the recently disturbed soil or whatever. So the area of the fields there, now this is part of the cultivated fields, or at least it's been mowed. I don't think he actually had a row crop in there last year. I think he just planted it with either alfalfa or ryegrass or something.
It was vegetated.
Yes, vegetated, but cultivated as opposed to unaltered resource area. So as you can see in one of the pictures there's a slight dusting of sediment there, thin coating of sediment. They've put pea stone, which you can see in some of the pictures. As I was trying to think of what could possibly be done to try and mitigate this, but the only other suggestion I could find in any of the sediment control manuals was like compost put against, but it freezes. And so the problem is the freezing, actually. Because the ground's frozen, the water can't infiltrate, so it's following where the recent disturbance was that installed the silt fence, and just, you know, oozing its way through there, like I said, based on hydrostatic pressure. So there's a slight coating of sediment in the parts of the field there, but I don't think that's detrimental. I think it's just, you know, dispersal of sediment water. If it was happening somewhere else, I'd be much more concerned about it. But where it's cultivated field, it actually shouldn't be detrimental. It's just visually you can see it, but it's not like chocolate milk. It's just sort of like tinged. So, and there doesn't seem to be any way to rectify it, other than just let it go, and, you know, when things thaw out or whatever, it'll probably soak right down through the soil, and then as soon as we get the first rain, it'll probably just work it right into the layer of the topsoil, and it might actually just fertilize it and make it be a little greener there come spring. But I wanted to let you know about that. Okay. Now that was the good. That was the good.
The happy.
Project report. Now we get involved with the ugly. .406 Havel Street. Some of you folks may have seen a well drilling rig established there right during the height of the last snowstorm. This property is Gateway Realty Trust.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, that's right.
Mr. John Coughlin, Joe Coughlin are the principals that we have had conversations with before. This property has an order of conditions on it. It's in our drinking water supply. Also, the company that drilled the well, Vera Artesian Well out of Georgetown, Mr. James Vera came and talked to me in the office about Mr. Coughlin's hiring him to install an irrigation well. Because the property had an outstanding order of conditions on it, I told Mr. Vera that he would need to provide our office with a written request from Gateway Realty Trust, because there was an order of conditions. The order of conditions did govern the establishment of monitoring wells, and therefore this proposed activity wasn't different from the scope of work that was already proposed. Told him that he would, you know, need to practice, you know, erosion control of any of the sediments, and that he would need to de-water any of his tailings. And so what you can see in the pictures,
This rock dust, is this,
that's apparently the tailing water.
yeah,
So,
exactly what it is.
yep. So now, they even supplied me with a diagram
It's
of
going-
where the proposed well was. So when I went in there to investigate what this big pile of dirt was, as you can see, I saw immediately that not only did we have a pile of sediments that possibly extends a little bit into the right-of-way, but that it's uncontained, no erosion control was used around it. There's also a small pile of wood debris, and there's also a plume that makes its way to the stormwater swale that then leads to a catch basin that goes under Haverhill Street and then discharges into an intermittent stream bordering vegetated wetlands on the other side of the property.
Yeah, I remember that.
Towards the well.
Yeah.
Towards special.
I
When you
also-
say plume, you mean dirt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
see the
dust.
clipboard?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's the reason I took
Well,
this
plume to
picture.
me is, yeah.
You can see,
Not good.
the sediment that was washing down and went
Mhm.
right into the swale and then went into the catch basin
Yeah.
and went over into the, probably over into the wetlands. But anyway, I mean, it's not contained at all, not stabilized, not removed. But then I noticed he'd had a bobcat on the site.
Is that
and
the
I
hole?
could. That is, I believe, the talc of the irrigation well. Then I noticed that there was a cleared bob track, wide track going back to the backside of the parking lot here. That's what these pictures are. Apparently what they did was they loaded their wash water
Into the bucket.
into the bucket of the Bobcat,
Mhm.
and then proceeded to go over to dump it into our 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, which of course is a protectable resource area under our bylaw. So I can either tell you about the other property, or we can do them one at a time. So I'm here tonight to request your guidance in what to do here.
What's
We-
the well farm?
This is irrigation,
Irrigating what?
and the landscaping.
What are the grass?
They're irrigating
Mostly
the wetland
cement.
right now.
There's not much grass in that stuff.
Well, there is some landscaping, there is some grass and
Yeah.
stuff on the site. But anyway, so we've had, now, again, Mr. Vera came in and talked to me. Mr. Vera was advised that this was within our groundwater protection, zone 2 protection area. He was advised that we had an outstanding order of conditions on the property. He was advised that he should use, appropriate practices, dumping the sediment water tailings from his drilling operation over into the buffer zone of BVW is not a normal practice for, and leaving uncontained, unstabilized sediments.
Those cuttings, that's a pile of cuttings, boy, that's
Yeah,
quite a,
so now with Mr. Coughlin, this is a property where previously the commission did have enforcement action with Mr. Coughlin, even after he had obtained an order of conditions, because he started work and cutting trees down there, and he was issued an enforcement order and a fine in that situation.
Did we find him?
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah, we did. I'd have to look it up. Well, actually, it's right here. Probably pull it
I
up.
remember.
I remember,
Non-compliance with the order.
I remember the file, I don't know why. I know he's been trouble. It's quite a pile of cuttings, huh?
that's all from the well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a,
You got me. It's an irrigation well. Of course, from the look of this, it looks like they definitely
we
went
had,
Definitely one.
in rock.
Yeah, I mean,
That's rock cutting.
he had,
Could it be better from the well?
well,
At first, that's what I thought, based on this.
Yeah, you're right.
But without seeing it.
Not that much.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have wasted that much.
Yep.
If you load the nitrogen into his well pump, fertilizes the lawn.
We fined him $450. $450. He hadn't, as far as we knew, he hadn't recorded or submitted proof of recording of the issued order. His site contractor that started the demolition did not have the order of conditions, permit requirements in his possession on the site. He failed to notify our office of the start of work. Erosion control measures that the some of them, not all of them, some of them that they had installed had not been inspected, but they had not installed all of the required erosion control. The order governed the clearing of vegetation, including trees. They hadn't had the pre-activity meeting, and they cut down trees around the building. And they also did not ever have a pre-activity meeting before they started work on the site. And we had a back and forth with them where they asserted that some of these things had occurred, but of course there was no proof, and since I'm your only staff person, I never attended a pre-activity meeting, and therefore there wasn't one. So,
Did you say there was a second incident as well?
no,
Okay, all right.
no.
You said second property, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, there's another property or whatever. I didn't know if you wanted to deal with the
There's another issue.
specifics of this
Totally.
particular issue, and then,
But it's not a
It's not
Gateway
related.
Realty Trust property.
oh, yeah.
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not this property.
No, it's not this property.
Or an adjoining
It's
property.
another site.
It's not adjoining.
No, it's not adjoining. No.
I think we might want to hear about the other one, too.
Okay. All right.
Just so in context.
Let me just gather this stuff.
Things are getting interesting now.
The same well company was hired to drill an irrigation well at the UPS building, 141 Newburyport Turnpike.
I thought that's where I
Yes.
saw the well.
Well,
I was thinking-
and I knew they were this trust company, so
Yeah, I just, when you said there was a well, I thought that's what you were going to say. But then I just-
Here again, Mr. Vera came into the office, and I believe I talked to, I think Doug and Kurt in regards to this.
Not me. I don't think.
Well, maybe it was just Doug then. But anyway, there is, the order of conditions for this property was closed just a
Right.
short time ago, so we issued a certificate of compliance. The proposed activity was slated to occur within the landscaped area
Right.
of the property. I was assured that proper erosion controls would be put in place. They submitted a sketch, so I knew exactly where the proposed activity was going to occur. I alerted them to the existence of the storm scepter subsurface unit that was installed near that area, so they actually repositioned where they were going to drill the well based on my alerting them to the underground storm scepter unit.
this side.
They did install erosion control, as you can see, there's staked hay bales. But again, they did not do appropriate dewatering, they discharged the sediments. Let's see. I thought there was another.
This one?
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry. So anyway, they apparently did the same thing with using the Bobcat bucket to dump the sediment laden outwash water. It flowed, and it's only 16 feet off the edge of delineated bordering vegetated wetlands. It extends approximately 30 to 40 feet, although in some cases it's only about a foot to 2 feet wide. But it's all, this is the delineated,
Yeah.
delineated bordering vegetated wetlands, and that plume of sediment is right here. Extends approximately 30 feet, although I didn't specifically tape it, but I think you get enough of an idea from the picture. I'm sorry, this picture is actually...
Any idea how thick? You didn't.
Quarter of an inch or whatever. No, I actually didn't stick my boot in it because I didn't want to mess it up, because I figured that it could be scraped up.
Yeah.
Again, it's within our zone too. This is definitely within the 100-foot buffer zone, bordering vegetated wetlands, so it's all jurisdictional areas to the commission, but there isn't an open outstanding permit on this site. And in discussions, again, with Mr. Vera, who was going to do the actual well drilling, he was aware that he needed to utilize erosion control, and he also was aware that he was supposed to do appropriate dewatering, which doesn't seem to be done. At least that's...
What constitutes appropriate dewatering in the bag, like?
You either use a bag or you set up a little basin surrounded by hay bales with filter fabric, and then you capture the sediments instead of discharging them to the resource area, and you allow the water to filter out. And then you take the sediments and you dispose of them in an upland area. That's what dump trucks are for.
As opposed to using dump trucks to carry
Or
the
a
sediment
bucket
over
that
to
just-
the, over to the wetland and dump it in there.
Dump truck.
Huh.
Are you suggesting that it would have been appropriate, or it would be appropriate to have to file an application?
Well, no, like I said, we've got an order here. That activity was performed in a previously altered and landscaped area, and there was no reason why it couldn't have been done appropriately that would have resulted in, again, you can see he established erosion control there.
Yeah.
You've got a mound of unstabilized or dislodged sediments that are controlled by a state hay bale line. There's no reason why hay bales couldn't have been established on the other property. But it's mostly the dumping of the tail, what is it, tail wash water, what do you call it?
Cuttings.
Cuttings.
Killing.
Drill cuttings.
I mean, that's dumped in a resource area, and there's no reason for it.
No, there really
And I'm,
isn't.
you know, on the one hand, if he hadn't come in and talked to me and provided all the appropriate documentation, you know, I mean, I thought this was going to be an exercise in him just coming in and going and doing it, and then us never ever talking about it or hearing about it
No,
again.
well, you talked to me about it.
Right.
It looked
Well,
really-
but I meant
Right.
the operator doing it.
Yes.
I
No,
thought
we
he,
talked
I
about
thought
it.
he was professional enough. He said he's a water commissioner in Georgetown.
Yeah.
I thought he was professional enough that, you know, when he told me he was on a dewater, I mean, I thought we both knew what that meant. I certainly didn't think it meant dumping.
Rewater.
I certainly didn't think it meant dumping the sediment down in our resource area.
Dates are interesting because on the
I know.
28th, he didn't use hay bales, but on the 1st, he did. So we had them.
Well, no, that's
Yeah.
only when I visited the site.
Oh, okay, this isn't the day it
No.
occurred. Oh, okay.
No. See, what
Oh,
happened
It could have
was,
been one
I
day
had
after
to
the
come in
other.
here Friday for a meeting, and I got stopped
the
in
first.
traffic, the first,
Yeah.
right next to this big mound of sediments in front of 406, because I come in Haverhill Street. So I'm sitting there looking at it, and I can see this bobcat, because they hadn't been plowing. That site isn't occupied right now. So the whole property isn't plowed, but there was this bobcat with track through the snow
Oh.
going to the back, and I see this pile of sediments with no erosion control around it. And again, I talked to this guy personally, so I'm like, well, geez, what the heck's going on here? So I pulled in there, saw that, and it's like, okay, I guess I gotta go take a look at the other site. So when I came back,
Okay.
Right across the street from Treegate.
Yes.
It's a bad corner. You should come another way.
That's a bad area.
On Fridays.
The Bermuda Triangle.
So what's your thought, Brent? What do you recommend?
Well, applying the normal criteria that we have, or we are looking at a degraded resource area, so we do have environmental damage.
Yep.
We have, on one site, we have uncontrolled sediments that are capable of eroding further. On this site, on both sites, we've got sediment plumes. One's got an open order of conditions, the other one doesn't have an order. You know, normally our normal
They're both in zone
guidance
2.
would be to issue enforcement orders and to consider, I don't know whether you want to consider fining or not, but I'll admit, I haven't had any conversation with either property owners.
I think my thought would be to issue enforcement orders and to mandate, some kind of remedial action
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, can it be cleaned up?
Yeah.
I mean, can it be picked
I
up?
would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, in most cases, it's just sitting on top of the leaf litter duff, and so I think you could scrape it up.
At
You know,
least
as
if
long
you
as things
don't-
aren't frozen, I think you could
Yeah.
just carefully scrape
Mhm.
it up by hand and get it out of there.
At least if you don't wait too long and have it
Right.
rained on and get all washed
On
out.
next snowstorm.
Right.
Yeah, right, which could be tomorrow, the next
Could be
day.
tomorrow, yeah.
Right.
So my feeling would be do that and see how successful they are at responding to that and fixing what they've done. And if they,
And do you want
Get
me
that
to
done.
issue orders to both the contractor as well as the property owner?
Are these wells done?
Oh, yeah.
they look like they're done.
So he's not,
No, but he's the guy that came and spoke to Brent.
Yeah.
So, and it's a water commissioner in another town. We're talking about the same person, right?
I believe that's what he represented to me.
He should be aware
I don't know.
of all of this.
Well, again, he
Right.
said to me he knew about dewatering, so I mean,
didn't want to go
again,
there.
I don't, I don't know to tell you that he really is anything other than untrustworthy,
well,
based on my experience here.
it's obvious he doesn't know what dewatering means.
No, but he really, if he's in the well drilling business, he should know better than to dump sediment in a wetland.
Yeah.
That's
Couldn't
that doesn't
agree
take-
more.
Doesn't
It's like
take
cutting
all
trees
that
down.
much. It's like cutting down trees.
Yep.
And he came in to see you beforehand.
Well, right, because I required the sketches, and with the open order of conditions at 406 Haverhill Street, I also required a letter from the Coughlin Gateway Realty Trust, because I wanted, because I wanted to impress on them that we had a permit.
Yeah.
And since we had talked, and since we had verbally talked about the appropriate measures that one would normally take in doing this type of activity, I didn't arrange to go out and inspect anything or whatever. I took the gentleman at his
Take care
word.
of it.
I think I would aim it at the Mr. Buren. I'm not sure what Mr. Coughlin could have done. He hired somebody who would appear to have been competent, directed him to us, made him aware of the need to interface with our office. He delegated the job to him, and he didn't do it right. But it's not Mr. Coughlin.
No, but
Gateway Realty Trust.
he should know about it, because maybe he'll be
Oh, I
able to
would-
put pressure
I
on
would
it.
CC him
I
on
mean,
it, but I wouldn't
it's his
make him one of the objects of the enforcement order.
Oh, okay.
That'd be my thought. What do you think?
I've got a concern about the fact that both of these are irrigation wells and systems for landscaping in sensitive areas, including Zone 2, and that we should have a way of conditioning that no heavy nitrogen fertilizer be injected into that.
We actually already do have those
I was gonna say, we
requirements.
must have that.
We have those requirements on both properties.
So he's just trying to minimize his water bills here.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Yep.
people do. There are no.
And since the water isn't leaving the site, you can't say that there's any type of problem because
Right.
It's just being
any
recycled.
yeah, it's just gonna go right back into the ground, same place it comes out, so, except for the stuff that evaporates.
So that would be my thought, and then see what kind of remediation efforts we get from them, and how successful they are. I mean, maybe you're right, and it is easy to clean this stuff up, and he'll just be able to get out there, clean it up, and I'd feel, less like finding him if it's a problem that can be solved.
I agree with that, I'm just not sure if the owner realizes yet that he has to be responsible for stuff like this.
Well, again, he probably was relying upon the same thing I relied
That's
upon,
right.
and that is talking to the gentleman, and the gentleman saying,
But he has a history.
mentioning the right protocols and the right way of doing things, and my relying upon him that, oh, he's gonna go do it.
But he has a history of this.
Not exactly this, though.
No. This
Not
is
this
really something where it
particular.
was totally this was totally under the subcontractor's control, if you wanna look at it that way.
And it was two incidents very similar in nature within a
Well, because he
couple
was
weeks of
hired to
each other.
doing both. yeah.
Obviously.
He went and did one, and then he came over and did the other one.
Right.
But I guess maybe there was a shortage of hay bales in the meantime when he went from 141 Newburyport Turnpike to 406.
And he'll probably just blame the guy on the backhoe and say that he didn't, he told him how to do it, but he didn't do it right. But
Probably him.
That's not a,
Probably
that's
him
not
or
a
his son.
backhoe.
or whatever it was, the Bobcat.
Bobcat. was his-
Oh, you mean the Bobcat truck?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
may have been him.
I would expect that he'd be around on that.
Well, we,
Running a drilling rig like that?
Well, it had to be a crew chief, so he's the one that made the decisions.
that's like the guy who cut down the trees. At some point, they delegate too much to do this, don't have very good judgment after a while, the people. But I'm not saying that's an excuse I'd accept. He needs to have his employees properly trained.
And we should find the best way to get it cleaned up,
Yeah.
whatever that method is.
Yep. But I think that it would be important to act as quickly as possible. There's a storm coming, and I don't think it's gonna be any easier to fix after this next storm.
No,
So, not much we can do about that.
no, in fact,
With the freezing conditions, it really isn't moving as much, but the problem is we've been in this
Right.
freeze-thaw cycle here.
And what I've heard, this storm that's coming is it's gonna be that kind of a storm with some freezing and some thawing and some rain and some snow, and that'll probably
it's
make
just
a
gonna
mess of
push
it
it
all.
all over the place.
Yeah.
push it right where you don't want it.
So now I hadn't prepared any documentation, but I can get the back signatory pages to enforcement orders if you want to vote to have me issue and if you want to sign.
Yeah, let's do that. You wanna do that? Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
sure.
I think we should, as long as we're all here, we should support it. What's it cost to drill a well like that, do you know? Does anybody know? I guess it depends on how far you go down and what you
It's
hit.
usually by vertical foot, so.
Yeah, it is, it's linear foot, so. I mean, it depends on the rig. If it's an air rig versus an auger bit or something like that, so that's, there's major
And-
differences there.
Mobilization jack.
And I will put in here the requirement to attend the next meeting.
That'd be good.
So
I've done
at that point, they could update you on the
700
progress.
foot wells in rock with an air rig that were easily over close to 10 grand. That was 15 plus years ago. God knows.
I was just wondering about the economics of it. Yeah, you save your irrigation bill, but how long does it take to
The
make that money
payback
back?
time must, gotta be pretty lengthy.
It seems like it would be long.
Well, the other side of the coin is.
You don't have to go very steep there.
Yeah.
Just right.
Probably not,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can use that when you're damaged from watering,
That's true too. Yeah.
so.
You can use that well.
Even if there's a
You can
watering
use
ban,
that.
you're not subject to the watering ban.
You're in a well drawdown zone.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
Can't be
was
true.
President
It's-
saying it.
I'd be surprised if they're very far into bedrock at all. But I don't know what bedrock is there. I would think it's pretty low.
They're just 2 doors down from that. Remember?
Down from what?
The gravel pit, the old gravel pit, next to this site.
Oh, Universal Stones
Yeah,
place there?
next to this site is the
that
granite place, and next to
Yeah.
that site is Universal Stone.
Well, no, actually,
There's one more in there.
Mr. Hurley, who was in,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
talking to us demolishing the house there,
That's right.
that, and
One
then
more.
you get,
Yep.
then you get to Universal Stones.
Oh, a place that's all,
Torn out, yeah.
yeah, it's all
Yeah.
piles of dirt and
Yeah.
freaking slabs of stone that just sticking up out of nowhere.
Yep, that one. That's a former gravel pit. But that's what the geology is around there, basically.
Yeah,
That's,
well,
even
I
all
would,
the way out to there, it's still zone 2. That's
yeah,
zone
yeah,
2.
yeah. You know, there's Huffley Hill, so that, you obviously know that's a knob of rock,
Right.
drops down into the river basin, so it's probably pretty,
May I request that there be a motion considered directing me on these 2 properties to issue an enforcement order to the contractor and copy the property owner?
Yes, that's so, let's do 2 motions, one for each
Okay,
property.
Okay, 141 Newburyport Turnpike.
For 141 Newburyport Turnpike, do I have that motion?
to move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
okay.
Aye, and all against, so that carries. And then the second property address for,
406 Haverhill Street.
same motion for 406 Haverhill Street and the same enforcement order. Do I have a motion?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, and all against, the motion carries.
Very good.
Given the interim outlook for the weather, you may want to call him and tell him it's coming. And if he could get out there right away and do something about it before it gets covered with slush, sleet, snow.
Making this guy move. is
It's gonna have to be tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just for your edification, this was one of the workshops I attended at the MACC conference. DEP is considering some regulatory changes. Not everything on the sheet, on the legal size sheet has to do with us, but there is a section that calls wetland proposals that's on there. That I thought you should know about. And then there will be public meetings, so the 8.5 by 11 pages, one of those gives the dates for the public hearings in the various regions, as well as it's got a summary sheet, one-page summary sheet that just kind of goes over the different changes that are being considered here.
We're under chapter 91? Wetlands?
Yeah, that's the docks. Docks and piers.
Oh, so it's not our wetland regulation.
No, but in many cases, of course, the docks or piers would be constructed within jurisdictional wetland resource areas, so they have had to get a permit from the commit. I don't know what the actual sequence is because we haven't had really any of these, so I'm not an expert in it, but you need both things, and they're trying to combine them, I believe, dovetail them together.
They're allowing a chapter 91 license to issue before Wetlands Protection Act order of conditions gets issued. Under one of these blurbs that I see in the back page. I have some problems with all that, but I don't know if there's anything I can do about it.
The other workshops that I attended, I went to a workshop on intrusions into conservation land and how to get a handle on those things. from some agents that have kind of done that in a very organized fashion, Framingham and Weston, I think. Their kind of intrusions, though, I think are substantially different than what we experience, since they have a slightly higher concentration of higher economic development. There was an example of
Yeah, makes sense.
in-ground pools and and quite elaborate playground swing sets on private property that actually were 2/3 of the way installed on conservation.
Conservation land?
Yeah.
Cool.
But they kind of have a different meaning to conservation land than we have. Apparently, this one community, if your house is over a certain square footage, you need planning board approval. When you go for planning board approval, they require like a no cut, no disturb on the back portions of the property. So the example we were being given, because I was asking them what, because they threw up this sketch and it had no cut, no disturb area, and I'm like, well, so is this wetlands resource area? Is there an order of conditions? They go, well, no, the planning board requires this no disturbance area and requires that they put a conservation easement on it.
Really?
Yes,
This is a very single-family home?
yeah. Well, these are
I mean, they're,
Yeah.
3 or 4 SUV single-family homes
Yeah.
with in-ground pools. And
Indoor pools.
And they also, their communities also apparently have GIS departments or whatever, because we were presented with, with very definite GIS things, showing, like that one person, half of their backyard. Most of it was on conservation land off the cul-de-sac, so. Because we got into a discussion, I was asking them about, well, you can't just enter onto this property or whatever, and they're like, oh, no, the planning board requires a CR, so we're there monitoring the CR. Like, oh, yeah, like, okay, yeah, everybody has a CR for the little no disturb area in their backyard. So anyway, of course, then they didn't get any sympathy from me when they said, oh yeah, we've got an annual budget of $20,000 to go survey and bound and put rods on our conservation property.
Actually,
Oh, really?
actually, we have done that for all our conservation properties, and it was probably done around 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying it's a bad
We
thing,
pay-
but I
no,
would
I'm
be
just
very
saying-
surprised at a $20,000 annual budget to do it.
And we paid for it out of the NOI fund.
Yeah.
If I recall, some other fund we had available at the time.
well, I could see doing that. I mean, if,
Right.
to
No,
take
it-
this Cook property, if it were a particularly appealing property then there was no funding available to get an adequate description, it might be worth spending the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just not an appealing enough property from what we know of it, but I can see the argument for it. Maybe we should add that to the budget, what do you think? No?
Well,
Brent says, sounds good to me.
It's proposed, it can be changed.
well, I've been working on it.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been working on documenting, various open space properties or whatever, and at some point in time, I might be prepared to say, well, something like that hasn't been done to this property, it probably should be done. Actually, whenever I get to looking at the conservation land that's off Kathleen Circle there, that might be a candidate if it's not monumented somehow where that comes and actually meets the roadway. Because then if you were thinking about establishing a trail or something, you'd want to have some assurances that you actually were on the open space property, thinking about a walking path going in there or something. Because sometimes it seems a shame that these properties don't really have any access to the citizenry for just, just walking. And that actually is one
That,
I'd like
that's
to
all
get together.
landlocked out there. I mean, it's.
No, it's got frontage.
The Kathleen Circle one, isn't it?
Kathleen
That's the big-
Circle one has got
That's that big-
frontage right on Kathleen
Big chunk
Circle.
of land
Is
there.
it a narrow?
I'd have to look at the plans, I mean, yeah.
It's kind of narrow, but it's not.
It's kind of narrow, but it's
narrow,
not,
narrow. Yeah.
it's not sidewalk narrow, it's
Right.
narrow
Okay.
enough that it would be like roadway width.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Okay.
not-
And that's that
It's
big parcel.
retained.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's got,
17 acres or
there's a lot of
something.
acreage there,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a big chunk of land.
Well, there was a proposal for a development out there at one time.
At one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other side, actually, so.
Right. But they had water supply issues.
On the other side, Forest Ridge.
Yes.
In between My Street and Forest Ridge.
That's right.
That's the area.
Actually, I think that is all. That is all, I believe, the specific business I had. I didn't know whether you wanted to entertain going into executive session to hear about the legal matters at all.
Which legal matters?
Uh,
If you can describe them without going into executive session.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
Scott Pine Realty Trust suit against DEP in the town of Raleigh.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah, I suppose we should. All right, so in order to do that, what do we have to do?
We have to have a roll call vote, and of course, we have to
Turn off the
suspend.
So, is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss, let's see, litigation, I guess is what it would be?
Yes.
All right, and then, let's see, we need a motion to go into executive session. Do I have a motion? A second?
Second.
And all in favor, and we have to be polled on this according to Brent.
Yeah, it's a roll call vote.
So, Mr. Garner?
Yeah, you state your name and aye or nay.
Robert Garner, aye.
Dave Delmonico, aye.
Douglas Watson, aye.
Kurt Turner, aye.
Sam Strife, aye.
All right, so we're in executive.